Hello and welcome to the Propelling Business Excellence podcast. I'm your host, Vibha Chawla, and I'm joined by Ryan Walsh, CEO of Valqari. I'm so excited to have you, Ryan, here, especially because you're also associated with 1871. So, very glad and very excited to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. Would you like to kick us off with your background and explain to us what you do and something more about your company as well?
Sure. Thank you, Viva. So yes, I'm Ryan Walsh. I'm the CEO and founder of Valqari. We build autonomous point-to-point drone delivery systems. It's something I've been working on for the last 11 years. It's a very exciting technology, and we're starting to see it really start to come into the forefront with the new FAA regulations on the horizon. So we're very excited about the future of the company and the future of our products. So yeah, we started in 2013 working on this technology. I had started my career in special operations with the 75th Ranger Regiment. And that was really when drones were first starting to enter the military space.
Uh-huh.
Seeing it really advance over those first years, early 2000s to about 2010, was a really big decade for drones and their advancement. And so seeing that, uh, my co-inventor and I, we saw the opportunities in drones 10, 11 years ago. And that's when we really started taking the step and kind of took the risk into starting our own business.
So, what does your Valkyrie company do? Can you give a little bit more description about the product so people can, yeah.
So you see this box over my shoulder for those that can
Yeah.
see it, right? That's one of our landing stations. It's a patented locker system that both sends and receives packages by drones. So
Oh,
we built
wow.
those systems as well as all of the connection software between that and the drone. So any drone operator is able to send packages or receive packages through one of our landing stations.
That's amazing. So, how can people leverage those services? I guess who are your customers?
We're seeing a lot of early adopters right now. As I mentioned, the regulations are about to change in the next 12 months or so, where we're going to start seeing beyond visual line of sight. And that's what's going to be the key to get deliveries from your pharmacy or a quick service restaurant or a local pizza joint. And so the the convenience and the mainstream adoption of drones is right on the horizon, and so we're gearing up and preparing for that. Working with a lot of the large Fortune 500 customers that are beginning to adopt this in anticipation of the new regulations coming.
That's amazing. I think this is very innovative and forthcoming and future thinking. Really great idea. Thank you. So, as we are in this Propelling Business Excellence podcast, Ryan, could you enlighten us, like, what are the misconceptions of running a business, and basically, how do you address them?
Yeah, I think there's a big fallacy with entrepreneurship and business ownership when it comes to kind of the glamour of it. Everybody thinks you have unlimited money and time, and nothing could be further from the truth. I'm often, scrambling to find where I'm going to cover my next bill, and often I'm, you know, trying to find when I'm going to have time in weeks from now, let alone days or today. So it's often people have an idea that the grass is greener on the other side, and it's just not true. It's just, I've been on both sides of the fence, and I would say that the business ownership and entrepreneurship side is orders of magnitude more difficult, and people oftentimes, they don't empathize or sympathize with your struggles very often, which can be a little bit lonely.
Yeah, I have heard also people telling me, "Hey, Veba, you're now your own boss. You can do whatever you want." I'm like, "All right, whatever I want."
That is a
Absolutely, and that makes total sense. Unlimited money and time. Yep. So I guess the work-life balance. Do you have work-life balance?
I
No.
wouldn't know what it looks like, to be honest with you. I love what I do, and so I'm working all the time. I think that is probably the single biggest superpower an entrepreneur can have is to enjoy what they do. So it's not actually a chore, right? If you're avoiding doing your work, you're probably not going to succeed. Um, so being able to find the joy in some of the more mundane and difficult tasks is really a secret to success in my opinion. Um, but there's always challenges. Every day is different. There's nothing in business school that would have taught me of the challenges I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of it comes down to human psychology. It's
Yeah.
just a different world.
Yeah. I think I see that too because I enjoy what I do. I am not looking for work-life balance. So,
Very little social. I have very little time to myself, and that's common amongst most of the entrepreneurs I know, right?
yeah, but it must be very hard. Yeah, I can understand that. So, having this innovative technology, you know, how do you envision what are your plans for next 1 to 3 future years?
I think that with these new regulations, the next year or so is really in preparation for that and being able to anticipate how this is going to deploy mainstream. Um, but after that, I think that there's going to be a big proliferation, very similar to what we saw with the internet or the smartphone.
Uh-huh.
Drones just provide far too much uh, efficiencies compared to what we have now. Um, People have expectations that things are going to come faster, cheaper, and it's going to be more convenient, but we don't have a system in place that can do that. If anything, it's becoming more difficult, taking longer and more expensive. And so I think that drones are going to radically change the fabric of kind of our day-to-day lives when we no longer really have to run errands or do chores like that anymore. Um, and so a lot of what I'm focusing on is being on the right side of those trends and making sure we're positioned properly. So it's a lot of strategic stuff I can't get into quite yet, but it's very exciting.
Okay. And you mentioned a couple of times about the regulations. Are these the sort of obstacles, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the question here is like, what obstacles do you anticipate with your 1 to 3 years goals?
Regulations are by far the biggest challenge for not just us, but the drone industry. The
Mm-hmm.
FAA and a lot of the sister regulatory agencies, they were supposed to have a lot of this stuff figured out as long as 10 years ago, 2015 in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
and just has not happened yet. And so it's been a challenge in the industry, and highly regulated industries are very difficult. I don't know that I would make the same choice again, knowing what I know now. Um, but we see that as an opportunity too. That's a barrier to entry that not many people can overcome. So there's definitely those challenges on top of the macroeconomic challenges. 2021, if you had a good idea or a bad idea, you were getting funded, and now you have to have almost a perfect business to get funded. I've seen a lot of great founders with exceptional businesses just struggle and some of them not find funding and have to wind down simply because the market has changed. There's not enough money around, and the bar is much higher now. There's a flock to quality, and so uh, raising capital has been a bigger challenge, which is the lifeblood of any startup. Um, and so weathering that storm, the labor market, especially where we went from, the 2019 into COVID into, kind of what we're seeing now. It's been a very dynamic few years in almost every aspect of business ownership. And so um, I would say a lot of the challenges are just staying adaptable and staying efficient and surviving.
Yeah, that could be definitely difficult. So we mentioned regulations,
The environment, the funding environment, and the
the
final
funding
piece would
environment,
be
right? Right,
the
right.
job market. Um, People's attitudes have changed significantly since COVID, and I don't know if it's
Oh,
necessarily
yeah.
better.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So in terms of funding, like, does the government provide you the funding? How does that work? For drones, etc. I mean, it's not. I
There's
don't know
many
if this.
ways to get funding in drones in most technologies.
Okay.
There's grant programs, which have always been a really great way to fund deep technology. The problem I've seen, especially in the last 5 years, is there seems to be a large contingent that kind of chase the trends and go after each round of funding, whether they end up, commercializing the technology or not. They tend to follow the wave of grant funding. And so that can be a challenge and oftentimes an oversaturated market. It's very hard to compete in that market now. Um, there's VC funding, which, I think most people over glamorize. People think if you're VC funded, you're set, when in reality, the day that check clears is probably the beginning of the hardest point in your life.
Mm.
Taking funding is a serious obligation and a serious responsibility. And I think far too many people see that as the end goal rather than the gas to really start the fire they need. Um,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so yeah, it goes back to people over glamorizing startups and entrepreneurship, and it's just a lot of in the trenches. And then there's also, bootstrapping, which is what I personally recommend. If you can get customers to build your company with you, it's
Yeah.
by far the most stable.
Right. Right. I can understand that. So, having said that, I think there's quite a lot of innovation here. You learned quite a lot through this process, and you explained quite a lot of things here. Uh, as much fancy as it sounds, the entrepreneurship and technology and innovation, I think there are challenges here. So, with this, I guess, what advice would you offer to the aspiring entrepreneurs or the businesses who are like, facing some challenges in their business?
Yeah. Every business owner goes through really high points and really low points. And it's really easy to convince yourself in the low points that it's time to walk away. But most of the times I've pushed through those and was able to write things and keep it moving. And oftentimes, people are ready to throw in the towel. And if you see any successful entrepreneurs or successful leaders in any area, they usually tell you perseverance and grit are some of the biggest qualities that got them there. And so, uh, throwing in the towel when things get hard is usually a pretty quick sign that entrepreneurship is not for you. Um, it's a tough road. It's all struggle, almost all struggle. I would say that the struggle is 95% of the time, and then there's a handful of times you get a nice article or you get an award or somebody says good job, but that's a rarity. Um, and so most people aren't built for that kind of life. Not having a lot of people to relate to, not being really popular in a lot of cases. Being a boss is not always the most popular job, especially when you're delivering bad news. And so it's a challenge mentally that I think most people are not even remotely aware of when they get into it, let alone prepared for. And so being able to be resilient, being able to handle that emotional, just, you know, tumultuousness, um, and knowing that at any given point, the other shoe is going to drop on anything. Everybody's out to get you almost all the time, and nobody's going to do you a favor. You have to pretty much grind out everything you get. Um, and some people just aren't built for that. So I would recommend most people don't get into entrepreneurship